All right, we're live. We're recording. Welcome everybody, American and Leeds. So honored to have Jir back on the channel. Jir, how you feeling? I saw some of your channel, and I know that you've been battling some little colds and stuff. You doing okay? Your voice sounds strong, at least in the pre-record.
It's getting better. I went on steroid. They put me on steroids today to try and shift it. I've had it for the last 2 weeks. I've an autoimmune disease as well, which kind of affects my lungs. So this is the first real flu that I've had, and I only had COVID a couple of weeks ago. So immune system was pretty low, and then this came in. I've had it for the last 2 weeks of coughing consistently. So finally, the doctor today said I would stick on some steroids, and that seems to have already made a massive difference. Voice is still not as normal level, which that's possibly a good thing for everybody else, though.
Well, glad you're feeling better. You look good. You look sharp. Your voice sounds strong. I can't tell if if it's not what it normally is. And Chris, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, just staying busy. I got 3 kids playing in the winter league right now, indoor. So keeping me busy. Watching a lot of youth soccer, and which is good and bad sometimes, but a lot of fun. And yeah, just staying busy with work and getting ready to celebrate Thanksgiving here in the States. So it's great.
Yeah, Thanksgiving Eve here in the States. So yeah, I'm excited for tomorrow. Obviously, to me, Thanksgiving is, at least here in the States, it's like sit down, have a meal, be thankful. It's just keep it simple. Christmas can be so stressful. I mean, it's another the gifts and everything, and adds another element to kind of stress levels, at least for me. This is simple. Yeah. Sit down, have a meal, be thankful. Keep it. I love it. And obviously here in the States, it's all religions, all backgrounds can get celebrated. So, okay. Let's dig in right into just what's happening today. As we talk, the 22nd of November, Nick Hammond broke about 6 hours ago, is to remain as Leeds United recruitment consultant until after next summer transfer window. I'm a fan of this. I think this is a good thing. I think he's been doing good. I thought he did great at Newcastle. I think I like the window thus far that he's had. I mean, I could have a couple of little, get a number 10, more fullbacks, more fullback depth, the center back depth. But all in all, when I look at the recruitment of Farke, who Chris, and I think Jir, you've said this too, could be the signing of the summer. I've got to endorse this. Jir, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a really smart move. I think we talked at the start of the season about the appointment of Nick Hammond and then the signings that were made. I think that the word that was used consistently throughout the summer was sensible. That's a sensible appointment. That's a sensible signing. That's a logical signing. There was nothing crazy. It was all made sense, and it was the right decisions to make on the back of a volatile end of previous season. So you needed a bit of calm. I think the new setup that they brought in there with Greta Steinson overseeing everything, then Nick Hammond as the transfer guru, and then there's a couple of other people gone in there recently as well. I think they're starting to diversify the amount of diversify the work to more people in a proper department to do the jobs properly. I think if you go back to what Parag Marathe said in his podcast address when the takeover went through, he said, I like to get the right people in to do the right jobs and let them do their jobs. I think Nick Hammond is a prime example of that. He had an excellent transfer window in his last window with Newcastle after their takeover, and he's had a very good transfer window for Leeds so far. And I expect the same. I think we're looking at loan signings maybe in January. But again, I think they'll be so that's already organised. They've already sat down and talked about it. They know what they're doing. They seem to have their ducks in a row and know what they're doing. So, yeah, I have very little reason to not trust what's going on inside the club at the moment. So, yeah, I'm very happy to see Nick Hammond stay till the next summer window. Hopefully, he stays beyond that again. Hopefully, it's just a rolling contract kind of thing. But yeah, he's a really good addition to the back of house.
Yeah, I think so too. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. I think it's a great move. I think it's interesting to see what the structure is going to look like. Without a traditional director of football kind of position. So with Hammond there, it seems like it's a more collaborative approach. And like Jerry, you said, they brought in some more scouts, and maybe they're just still building out that structure, and it's just going to take a little bit more time. So keeping Hammond there, and then you have possible promotion, having Hammond there through the summer to help make that transition is going to be another huge push for us. I think the ownership have gotten it really. I think they've done a really good job behind the scenes. I think just building out that structure. The one surprise I do have is Angus Kinnear is still in place, and I feel like that's okay. There was a time at the beginning of the year where, Alex, I know you and I talked about this. We thought maybe his days were numbered, but it seems like they're building out a real proper structure, and it seems to be pushing on real well. So yeah, I'm really pleased with what's happening.
Sorry. Yeah. Angus is I don't know. He's the company man. He's this guy in the suit. Sometimes I get what he is and his value, but sometimes I question whether he's really good at it. So I don't know. I sit on the fence with Angus, and there's been times where I think he should go in the bin, and then there's times, well, if the ownership finds value in him, then who am I to say? Why don't you think this is permanent, Jared? It's just kind of looks like it's kind of year to year type of deal with Hammond.
Because the wording puts a date on it. The wording says he's here till the end of the next summer transfer window, which is a date. They had said initially he was here until the end of the summer window this year, and then they extended that, and he's going to do the winter window. And I think they'd said before that the news that had come out from the club was that they were very happy with what he was doing, and they were hoping he would stay for the winter and then the next summer window. So the fact that they're putting a date on it leads me to think that maybe it's not something he wants to do long term himself, or they're just playing it as they go and seeing, well, where will we be in that situation? Let's not put all of our eggs in one basket just in case it doesn't go well in the next two windows. And then, you're not stuck with a guy on a long contract. You can wiggle your way out of that as well. I think it's a sensible move for both of them just to sit back and adjust and have a look at it then and play it as it goes. And I think the fact that they've asked him to stay on means there's faith in him. And I think that he obviously likes what's going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bits in that. I think Angus Kinnear actually falls into that bracket as well. I think things are quite calm behind the scenes. I think there's a proper structure in place. And if you look at what Kinnear did when he was at West Ham and when he was at Arsenal, he seemed to do very well in proper clubs with real structures behind the scenes. West Ham less so, but Arsenal definitely. And I think right now he's not being asked to write program notes. He's not being asked to be the public face of the club. He's been asked to just do his job as a CEO. And I think that's fine. I think he does a very good job as that. Just keep him away from the public and let him do his job. And I think he's okay there. Same with Greta Steinson. We haven't seen Greta Steinson standing up in the stadium, shouting, waving his arms. He's behind the scene doing his job. And the same with Nick Hammond. I mean, we've barely never seen Nick Hammond at all outside of pictures. And it's very hard even if you Google Nick Hammond, it's a handful of photographs that you can even find of the guy. So again, very low profile. And I think that's what the 49ers want. They want their staff to be their staff and be low profile. And they want Daniel Farke as the manager to be the face of the club for all the public stuff. And I think it works really, really well right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Sorry, I was just going to say that's a great point, Jared. The fact that Hammond wants to stay on through the summer is a good sign, right, for the club. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like we proved ourselves to him. I was really great to see Parag at the Leicester game. I know this was a few weeks ago, but just that vote, he understood that it was an important game in terms of this promotion push. And I don't know, I just like to see ownership there, at least in big moments. Doesn't have to be there every game, doesn't have to be in the owner's box every single game, but that presence I think is important for the team to feel. Some of the news that came out today on the injury front is I guess the negative. We'll start, I guess, bad news first. Jorginho Ruter, a major doubt for Rotterdam. Good news is Struijk and Byram are a surprise and have put themselves in outside contention. I'll also say that Joffrey's hand looks good, which is nice because there might need to be striker death now that Ruter is out. And as well as I thought Jed Spence being a full participant in practice is absolutely huge. I think if we can get anything close to 60-70% of what he was for Nottingham Forest, he had an exceptional year there. That would be a dream to even get him for half the season at that level. But yeah, 60 to 70% of that would be a really good fullback, I think, in the championship. So what are you guys thinking as, putting your managerial hats on as far as lineup? How are you approaching this one? And let's go with, we can kind of put and say it's worst case scenario or best case scenario with the two injuries on Byram and Stroik. We'll start with Chris.
I was thinking I'm expecting kind of the same lineup that we went with Plymouth. Perhaps Furbo
like that.
Furbo at left back. And then you'll have Gray at right back, and Rodon and Cooper in the back line with Melier in the goal. And, Ampadu, Kamara, who else was out there? Yeah, Somerville. And then, of course, where it gets a little tricky is when you start moving up front. So Rutter out. Do you keep Piro in that 10 role, or do you put him in the 9? Do you bring Nanto in to pair up with him? Or do you just simply put Bamford in for Rutter and keep everything else the same? James and Somerville. I would personally like to see Nanto maybe in that 10 role and Piro at 9. I think that would be interesting. But yeah, just evidence-based, what we've seen from Farke so far. I don't expect a lot of changes.
Yeah, he likes that consistency.
Yeah, and there's value in that, of course, but this might be the game if you're going to switch a little bit up, maybe to do it. You got guys coming off the international break. Maybe give them a rest. But yeah, of course, what was the game where Gruev started and see, that didn't go so well. So maybe lesson learned, and Jer, I know you push this, and whatever changes we do make, we have to start fast. Like, we can't regress back to 3 games ago where we were kind of in this rut of starting really slow, not moving the ball out quick enough, getting through the lines. Like, it was so evident. And, I think that's been the biggest shift. It's putting in a lineup that, with the understanding that we've got to move it quick. So you got to have guys in there that can get into the space, receive the ball, and push it through the lines of the midfielders. I think Kamara's made a big difference in that role. So, yeah.
Jay, what do you think? Oh, I think Chris has hit every nail on the head pretty much with that. The start's vital. So we are. It's strange to say this, and I'll keep on saying it. Just from a coaching perspective, if you know what makes your team click, then that's your style, and you stick to that. When we are out of the blocks fast, moving the ball quickly, getting forward rapidly, transitioning very quickly from defense to attack, and the opposite when needed, we are an incredibly good team, and we are good enough to win this division. When we start dropping deep, going slow, and doing tippy-tappy ball around our own half, we invite pressure, we lose the ball, we seem to lose concentration and focus, and we concede silly goals. We've conceded goals against teams we shouldn't have conceded goals against. We've had teams there for the taking to absolutely put a number past, and we've stopped short because we're trying to conserve. And I don't want this Leeds team to be a conservative team. I think we're at our best when we're not conservative, and I think we're at our worst when we are conservative. From a team line perspective, again, Chris is right. I think you picked the players to fit the system, but again, I don't think Daniel Farke will change that system too much. He's a manager who, again, I think the Stoke game might have scared him a little bit to think, right, not everyone here is at the level. Yeah, there are some changes I'd like to see though for this game. I mean, Rotherham are 22nd, and I think there's some decisions that need to be made on some players as well coming into January from our side of things. You've got I agree with Chris. I would love to see Pero move into the 9 and Nanto come into the 10. I think Willie Nanto is tailor-made to be number 10. He is mobile. He presses. He covers ground. He's tricky. He's a low center of gravity. He's very hard to tackle. He wins fouls. And he's got a rocket in both feet when he needs to shoot. And he knows where the goal is if he needs to score. And then you put Pero into the 9 where he just needs to be, for me. He just needs to be in the number 9 to be effective properly. And I just don't think Daniel Farke is going to do it. I think he's going to put Pat Bamford up top and he's going to leave Pero on the 10 and we're going to be disappointed. And I would like to see him try something different with that position. I would like to see him start Gelhardt if Gelhardt's in his thinking. If not, then Gelhardt has to go in January. It's that simple. If he's not going to play him and he's not getting minutes off the bench, and there's no point in hanging on to the kid anymore. Let him go and play football somewhere else. Ian Pavade is another one. Ian Pavade is a natural number 10, can go into that number 10 position. He's looked very good in preseason. He looked very good in the League Cup matches that he did play. Hasn't kicked the ball really since then. Came off the bench in one game in injury time for us recently. But again, you could put Pero on the 9 and Pavade into the 10. And the reason why you could do that in this game is Rotherham are 22nd in the league and have won one game in the last 5. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. Sorry, 2 of the last 4 games. They're not in great form. They've no manager. Still haven't appointed a manager. So if ever there was a chance to put 1 or 2, no more than that, 1 or 2 players in, this would be the game. If you don't, then what's the point of having these players? Charlie Creswell's another one. I'd like to see Charlie Creswell come in, but he won't. Cooper will start. I think the team will be Melier and goal, Gray at right back. I think it'll be Rodon and Cooper. And then it's a coin toss to see if Sam Byram passes the fitness test tomorrow. If he does, Byram goes in. If he doesn't, Firpo starts. And again, I'm worried about that because the goal we did concede in our last game happens as soon as Junior Firpo comes onto the pitch and is down his side of the pitch where the ball gets played in space, and there's no sign of Junior Firpo. Middle of the park, I think it'll be Ampadu and Kamara again, and then I think you'll got Somerville and James out wide, and it'll be probably Pero in the 10, Bamford in the 9. I'd like to see Pero in the 9 and either Nanto or Pavade in the 10. Just have a look at it, and if they're not good enough, they're not good enough. We move them on in January, but at some point we have to actually see if these players are at this level. And against a team like Rotherham, you've got no other opportunity better than this outside of hopefully a lower league club in the FA Cup to give these guys a few minutes to have a look at them. But I want to see these players when they're surrounded by the better Leeds players. I don't want to see them in a cup match when the entire 11 is second string players. I want to see them when you put a player in with better players, they play better. I want to see Ian Pavade play with the Leeds team when all the best players are on the park, because then he has the best opportunity to show. Same with Joe Gelhardt. You play the two of them in a cup match against Stevenage. You're going to play that. You're going to drop most of that team. You're going to play most of your reserves in that game, and you learn nothing from that because he's playing with average players. So I don't think he'll do it. I think he'll go with pretty much the exact same team that he played against Plymouth outside of the left back position, which I think will be a coin toss late. But it's great news to see that Stroke is so close to being back. Shackleton being back in training as well gives him options at right back as well. If he wants to, if Ampadu is not flying fit after playing yesterday, then maybe Shax goes in at right back and Archie goes back into the middle of the park. He can do some stuff there because Archie came back from the international early. They had an agreement for him to come back early. Yeah, there is options there, but I think if he gets away with the test that he's doing tomorrow, I think he goes with the same team that he had at Plymouth. It's a very long answer for a very
it's good that he's. I think he's shy. I think he might be shy based on the Stoke game. And I think the back line pretty much names itself depending on health and condition. So I think he'll figure out, who's probably the most fit for the back line, whether it be Cooper and Byram or Firpo, which is probably not the ideal, or Strouk does come in. It'd be great to see him, obviously coming off that abdominal surgery. I don't think he'll be conservative. He'll probably be conservative and won't start Strouk for 90. I just don't see him playing a full 90. So Cooper probably does come in, and then Sam, I would think he would probably have the chance to start. So you're really looking at up top. I really do, based on what you guys just said. I get excited about Nanto in the 10. And Pro up top. I mean, Pro, there's something about his finishing where it just slows down for him in that moment. There's guys that can finish, and you can see the game slow down for them where they're kind of like, I've got this. And Pro's got it. Pro's got that. Yeah. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not, pressing. I don't know if he's on the ball tactically the most, the best guy. But if he did, he'd probably be $100 million pound player, not playing in the championship. But he does have that ability to finish. And so,
Alex, that's exactly what Ritter needs.
Yeah,
in my opinion, I think that's his weakness. He needs to be able to just take a breath before he takes that final touch, and he seems like he's, his adrenaline's just pumping, and, he'll scuff the shot or just take it too quickly. He just needs to take a moment.
He seems to throw a leg at the ball, doesn't he? He just seems to swing his leg. Like he's falling back. And
Seems very off balance. Very off balance when he's shooting. But it's interesting. And
I've noticed our shots just go. If Farke is preaching this in the in training, it feels like our shots are going. They're picking a corner much more. Where I felt like Bielsa and Marsh, they were. I don't know. They were kind of lifting the ball in the air a lot. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just feels like, and maybe this is Perot's influence too. Maybe that's how he finishes. It looks like they're going low and hard. All the shots on goal are kind of low and hard in a corner. So and we know that Farke was a 9. Go ahead.
I think it's down to the style of play. If you look at Marsh and Bielsa, not that they're comparable at all, but there seemed to be an awful lot more focus on the wingers, and the wingers would get to the end line and pull the ball back, and you have someone running onto it, and that's where you get that kind of elevated shot then, because they're running onto the ball and coming at them at pace, and it kind of lifts. Whereas if you look at what's happening with Leeds, it's kind of going into a feet, there's a runner off around it, and this ball's being played in front of them to run on to have a shot, so it's more controlled because the ball's in front of them. They can see the goal, they can see the whole picture, and they just put their foot through it into the corner. But it is trickier when you're coming onto moving balls and pulled backwards and you're coming forwards. It can be if you hit it too hard, it's going to lift. If you lean back too much, it's going to go into the stands. So it's a snatch.
Can I go back to something Jer said? I think he said something really interesting, and I'm wondering, just as a question to you guys. So it's really interesting that the idea of playing some of these guys like Gelhardt, Cresswell, to see if, because I agree with you. I think that could inform the January window. And I'm just wondering if they already kind of have their recruitment plan in place, or are they truly open to bringing in these guys and allowing them to get a look, at least to see, because I think, if a Gelhardt does really well, if he's all of a sudden in form, Pavetta, some of these guys, they'll continue to provide depth, and that may inform what you do with Ananto in the January window. But if you don't play them, then you don't know. It's hard to say what that depth looks like at certain positions. So I'm just curious to
isn't it? That's the word, is depth. Like if
you're not, it's just determining.
It's not depth. Do you know what
right.
I mean?
It's not.
Benches, then that's exactly what they are. They're just bodies filling shorts, and maybe they're slightly better than the other bodies filling shorts, and that's why they're on the bench. But if you're not playing them, if you're not giving them regular minutes off the bench, if you're not getting 15, 20, half an hour off the bench in games, if you're the same 3 or 4 subs that he makes out of the 9 every week, and the same 4 lads aren't getting used every week, well, then what really is there any point in having them if you don't have faith in them? Right. Maybe, but for their careers as well, for the players themselves, let them go and play football somewhere else, whether it's a loan, whether it's permanent. But there's no point in having them. You're not gaining anything by having them sit on the bench doing nothing. You may.
Then and if you do need that injuries, they're coming on with no minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Right? Say that again, Chris. Sorry, I apologize. I accidentally hit
was it the barking dog?
But and I was playing with something. My cursor was. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying if you don't give them any minutes, if you don't give them any minutes, and then you do have a rash of injuries, and you all of a sudden need them to play, you're not really setting them up very well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're not playing on 21 football, so they're not sharp. They're just training matches, and that's not the same intensity. It's not the same level as real matches give you. And again, if they're not playing, then they're not the depth you're looking for. Then arguably you need 3 to 4 players on the bench that you can bring on in a game to impact the match. The ones you've got are not those players. So therefore, all of a sudden your January transfer window isn't just getting maybe a left back and a 10. It's getting a left back and a 10 and maybe a couple of bodies on the bench that can impact the game that you will actually bring on and play. But there's no point in having 7 subs on the bench if the 4 you're going to bring on or the 5 you bring on are the same 5 every single week and the other lads just don't play at all. Then get rid of those lads and bring in players that can actually give you competition on your bench. So when you do look around at your bench, you've got options. You're not the same four, but you've got different types of players and positions that can change games in different kinds of way. Like if you do need to go more direct, you've got a bigger striker. If you don't want to go more direct, you want to go more on the ground, you've got a playmaker. You've got to have options to fit your style. And right now, I don't know if he believes in Charlie Cresswell, and I think it's a real crying shame, because for me, if Rodon's not available, Charlie Cresswell showed in the second half of the season, the championship last year with Millwall, that he was more than capable of playing at that level and doing really, really well. They would have made the playoffs only for he got injured. They were flying until he got injured at the end of the season, and now he's not playing at all. And the alternative is that we bring Liam Cooper in at left centre back, move Pascal Struijk out to the right, and then all of a sudden the whole back line is just a mess, because Struijk is excellent this season at left centre back, but he's not been very good at right centre back. Liam Cooper is Liam Cooper. I mean, the first thing he did when he came on a couple of weeks ago was nearly give a penalty away. So that's there. So if Cresswell's not the right-footed replacement, if you're willing to upset the balance of your back line rather than put in a like-for-like replacement, then that like-for-like replacement clearly isn't the level you want to have in that position. So then you need to upgrade that position. Same at right back. If you're putting a midfielder in right back, then you need to get into the right back, because a midfielder shouldn't be playing in right back.
Yeah, this is basically segued naturally into the topic that I wanted to bring up, which was the players that I would call them in American baseball. There's levels, and it's like single A, double A, triple A, and then the major leagues, the biggest, the highest professional league you can have. And it seems like we have a bunch of players that you would call 4A. They're not in the pros, but they're not at the highest. They're not at the highest level, right? The highest professional level, and they're above the level of the U21s or whatever that they're doing right now. And each one has its own nuance, right? Each one has you have to take it case by case. But we do seem to have a plethora of players that are at this just tween level, and you don't really want to let them go because they could be good assets. Bate being one, Jaffe, Jabby, Joseph, who was knocking on the door, Greenwood, which is on loan.
That's the guy that should start on Friday.
Joseph. Yeah, that's what you want to see, right? There's just a bunch of players you want to take a look at.
I'm excited to see him. I'm excited.
Me too.
Me too. I'm excited to see him get a start. Where I'm not excited, I know what Pat Bamford does. I know what he brings, and I know the good and the bad. I want to see what Matteo Joseph has. He's scored goals for England during the week. He's been on fire in under-21s.
Yeah, he had a great goal. He had a great back flick.
Yeah, goal. He's a finisher. And if you look at the goals he scores, he's a natural finisher in the box. And I think we lack that a little bit. I think we don't have an out-and-out natural finisher because Pirro's not playing in that position. So I think if you look at the kind of balls Dan James smashes across the box, how many of them go all the way across the box with no one ever in there to finish them, because there's a natural number 9 is not in there. Now, maybe Bamford will do that. But I want to be excited to see players Leeds have. And I would be very excited to see Matteo Joseph start.
He's the one for me as well. That's the one I want to see.
What about McGurk? You've been singing his praises a little bit, Gier, as a finisher, but a little bit too early for him. What do you think?
He's a bit of a deeper player as well. He is more of a 10. He can play as a 9, but he's very much more of a 10. But he is a goal-scoring number 10, especially this season. Obviously, in the interview I did with Michael Scubal, I asked him about McGurk, and he has said it. He's having a fantastic season. He's matured. It's a big year for McGurk. He's aging out of the under-21 setup because next year he can't play under-21s again. So Leeds have a decision to make with him of, is he going to push through to the first team, or is he going to have to go somewhere else? They're going to have to loan him out for a year. And that might not be a bad option for him either, to go out for a year on loan. But he's a very tidy footballer. His work rate for me is his biggest asset. He covers ground. He gets around the pitch. He's a tough tackler when he needs to be. He can use the ball very, very tidily when he has to be. And last season, I wouldn't have described him as a spectacular player. He was in the team and he was part of the successes they had, but he wasn't a standout player. Now the team has gone up a level. All of a sudden, McGurk has gone up a level. And now he's a standout player. Even in the European games, which are the real test for this team, he has been fantastic in those games. So the problem for McGurk is, if ever there was a bad time to be a young player trying to break into the senior team, it's now, because you've got Jorginho, Gelhardt, Bamford, Pirro, arguably Pavetta in the 10, Nonto, are all competing for that number 9 spot or number 10 spot. They're all in that mix. And then you've got a Sean McGurk popping his head up at the back, kind of going, what about me? It's a tough group to get through. because there's a lot of talent in that group and a lot of experience in some areas of that group as well. So it's a tricky one to break through. He's a kid I'd love to see make it, because I'm a big fan of players with a good attitude and a work. I dislike players who have a lazy attitude. No matter how good they are, I would much rather have 11 players that will run through a brick wall for me than have 6 players that will do that and 4, flamboyant players who kind of stand around, walk, and want you to do the work for them. Ronaldo, for example, do the work for me, give me the ball. I don't want. I love players, and I think a team always does better when you've got players that are all committed and working hard. Sean McGurk's work level and work rate is very, very high, and for me, he's a player I'd love to see make it because of that. But there's also a finish there as well and a clever eye. Whereas if you take, say, another Leeds young player who's a hard worker, look at Jamie Shackleton, incredibly hard worker, never lets Leeds down, but it's probably a 7 out of 10 every week. But it's consistent. That's a good thing. He's a consistent, but there's nothing spectacular there. There's not going to be goals. You're not going to get loads of assists from him, but he'll go in, he'll work hard, and he'll do his job. McGurk has a little bit extra in there where he can finish, he can do things, but it's going to be very, very hard for him to get his breakthrough.
Interesting. I don't know. I think you got to take them each case by case. I think there's players I'm not even mentioning. But some of these players you want to hold on to, you want to offer contracts to, and honestly, I look back at a guy like Joffe. He was up there. He was he was highly rated. That wave that came through Joffe, Greenwood. I tweeted you at the time when you guys talked about Greenwood, which was an interesting. He's obviously doing some great things at Borough, but that wave of Joffe, Greenwood, and Somerville hit. Somerville is going to be probably the most talented and maybe prized asset out of that, when everyone was really focused on Joffe and maybe even Greenwood. Yeah. Not a lot of people were talking about Somerville. And so this next other wave, with Joffe's still there, is Bate going to come up? Is Jabby, who had ton of talent? I know Jabby, we were all thinking in the summer Jabby was going to be, knocking on the door. Joseph is really getting some eyes to pop. McGurk, Cresswell was somebody that had a really great season last year, for whatever reason is not rated. So by the gaffer, at least, at this moment in time, it's going to be interesting. Gave him the 5 shirt too. Gave Charlie Cresswell the 5 shirt. So I don't know.
He's got a little bit of time though. He's got a new 5-year deal, but again, if you're not going to use him, send him out on loan so he keeps developing. So you do have him next year or the year after, and he's continued that development. Don't leave him sitting on your bench. You're wasting a year of development. Get him out on loan. The concerning. None of this, by the way, is me criticizing Farke. We're just talking about options, and I want him to have. I'd like Farke to have the options that are the best for him to have on the bench that he can use, and the best players that are there. And I think if there's a group of players that he's not going to use, then the club needs to help him with that and move them on and get players in that he can. But if you look at Cressy, he's got 5 years there of an additional contract. You should be loaning him out. Farke did say a few weeks ago, though, well, he's part of our squad planning group, so he's kind of, when we're doing opposition, that this team is taking the opposition's shape and tactics, and this is ours, and we're going to play against that, so we're used to playing against the opposition in training sessions. That's no good for Charlie Cresswell for that to be his role at Leeds United. Do you know what I mean?
Practice squad.
Yeah, exactly. He's the backup. He's the second string, but he's not the under-21s. He's again, as Alex says, you're in that middle bracket, but we don't have a reserve team, so you're not playing. And training matches just aren't the same level of intensity. They're not the same. You're not going to develop there. So Cressy's got time with Leeds. At least we've got that with him. You could loan him out for a season or two and then get him back, and he's developed more, and now he's ready. Joffe less so. Greenwood's out of contract. They're gone. Pretty much Pavetta, he's out of the contract at the end of the season as well. There's a lot of these players that are all of a sudden don't have long contracts. So the club, they really need to make a decision quick on some of these kids. And if it's a case that they're not going to make it this year, fine. Offer them a longer term deal and send them out on loan and let them play so we can see them develop.
I think of another factor too is just, we're in a relegation battle last year, and I know we talked a little bit about this. It was a shame we didn't get to see some of the younger players last year play because the stakes were so high being in a relegation battle. Now we're in a promotion battle where the stakes are just going to get higher and higher as the season goes on. So, there is always that risk factor with playing the youth. The timing has to be right. The circumstances have to be right. So it's almost a little unfortunate that we've been in such high stakes matches through the end of last season, the beginning of this season, and probably throughout this whole season. So I wonder too if we'll see just those opportunities present themselves based on that alone.
It's a great
Because
point. It's a great point. It is a great point because if you're the manager, it's a really good point actually, Chris. Because if you're the manager, can you take a chance?
No, I don't know. Based on where we're at,
he has to win every game now. Can't lose any more games now. Can't lose any more ground. Last season, couldn't lose any games. So it's the same. You're dead right. It's a horrible position for him to be. But then again, if you get promoted next year, he has to try and avoid relegation again. So then you're into that same mix again. So
and the players have to be at a different level next year. You know, and who knows what the squad's going to look like because they all have to kind of be at that elite level in the Premier League.
If you're not getting regular game time in the Championship, then it's safe to say you won't get regular game time in the Premier League.
Right.
So there's a decision that's possibly already been made. The other thing, actually, Alex, when you mentioned Prague being over, I was wondering, because it wasn't just Prague, there was a lot of them were over. And I was wondering, was that the January planning? Were they sitting down to go through some of the January stuff and get it ready early and get it ready to go? Because it was great to see them all there, but I wonder, was there another reason? I also meant to say to you, sorry for hijacking.
Yeah, you're good.
Leeds have appointed somebody else today. It's only just come out. Robbie Evans. Leeds have appointed Robbie Evans as the CSO officer, the chief strategy officer for the club. He's coming in from the 49ers. Oversees the institution of the data-centric, forward-looking strategy and long-term success.
Stadium.
And commercial.
Well, if you've been following Gier and myself and a few other channels, we've just been the 49ers. If you and Gier, you were doing your homework on the 49ers when they had 44%, and maybe even before that. They are a well-run organization here in the States. They are a top club, top franchise, and and Parag is a heck of a negotiator for them. And no, they have not won the the title, the main trophy here in the United States, which is the Super Bowl. But they've been in and amongst that conversation. There are no other kind of other trophies you can get. There's only really one, maybe two trophies that you can get. And they did get the conference championship a couple years ago. But they're just the professionalism, the talent, position by position. When you look at the 49ers, they're a top run organization, and they're having another good season here in the NFL. So I just think the professionalism level has stepped up so much since they've taken over, and I suspect that to continue.
The Kraken stuff was interesting as well, Alex, this week.
Yeah, so I was going to say
to the Ackerley group or the Ackerley family.
Yeah,
yes,
we're also a stakeholder in Seattle Kraken. Now, obviously, I work for Microsoft and I work with the Corp team, so they're all based in Seattle. So, my one of my colleagues is a season ticket holder at the Kraken. He's a big hockey fan, and I asked him, "What do you know about the Ackerleys? Is this a good move?" And I got a very short. It was a team's conversation. I got a very short response from that said, "A club. This is us now. A club with a stable financial future." Right. He said. I was like, "Yeah, that's enough." That's against another smart. And the Ackerleys, apparently, their specialty or what they're going to be focusing on is the investment in commercial projects for Leeds and revenue on match days and stuff like that. So this is going to be not just a stadium, but the outer of the stadium, like the pubs and shops and whatever else that goes around the outside of the stadium for match day stuff. So they're being brought in very clearly to raise money and to use their connections to give Leeds the most match day revenue and commercial revenue they can make from the club. So again, another really smart move. Bringing people. Now, I'm saying smart now. So in 12 months' time, if they turn out to be head cases, it's based on the current information that I have, and not based on what they're going to do. But I think it's a smart and sensible move, and I think it'll be fine.
I was reading an article about the Ackerley brothers, and so this article was from June or July this summer. And in that article, because they were talking about, I think it's called a SPAC, like a special programming, or maybe, something investment
group. Here somewhere. I wrote me notes for yesterday. I wrote it. I'll find it.
Yeah. but this company that they have where they obviously want to invest in sports. And in this article, they mentioned that they are looking at partnering with a European soccer club, football club. This was back in the summer.
Yeah,
I think this may have been in place for a while. I think you could probably maybe say back in the summer, they were already talking and this was going to be the plan. And Jareth, if you might be spot on that with that in mind, during the Leicester match, they're in town to talk about transfers, knowing they're going to have that extra cash.
Yeah, it's interesting how that cash will work because the initial money that comes in is to be for investment in commercial stuff. But what that does is that means that frees up. They would have had to spend on commercial that now they don't have to spend on commercial.
Exactly.
I don't think a massive difference to the transfer this season, but it might down the road. The SPAC are referred to as the Special Purpose Acquisition Company, and they're called ESH Acquisition Corp, which targets enterprises in entertainment, sports, and hospitality. The group recently raised $115 million in its IPO as well. There's some interesting stuff. They've got Bloomberg said that the Arctic Partners said they will provide strategic capital to expand the football and commercial operations of Leeds United.
Yeah, and they're a family outfit, just like the 49ers are. Very similar origins, and I think they're not just going to partner up with any group. So I'm pretty positive about this. I feel like it's going to be good.
Yeah, I think any additional, investment is a good thing. I honestly, to be honest, I'm on the other side of the coin. I didn't know, not negative. I just didn't know about the Seattle Kraken because they were an expansion team during COVID 2020.
Cheers. Yeah.
But when you're a new club, as I think they try to get revenue from other sources besides just ticket sales because they know they're not necessarily going to be good right away. So any way that they can maximize those revenue streams, I think, is something that the 49ers enterprises are interested in.
What's interesting to Kraken is they're 3 years in existence. As you said, as an expansion franchise. First year wasn't so good, what you would expect from an expansion franchise. But last year they made the playoffs in their second year, which doesn't usually happen with an expansion team that quickly. Now they're struggling this year. They haven't had a great start to their season this year. But they have made the playoffs in one of their first 3 seasons of existence, which is a big thing as well, which means that the structure behind the club has obviously been set up in a way that it can grow quick enough, or at least get into the position where it can challenge for playoff positions, which is not easy in hockey, especially for an expansion side. And
I think their attendance is up there at the top of the league.
Yeah, they're in Owens.
So
tickets for it, and they're really expensive. He was on a waiting list for a season ticket to be renewed. So even though he has a season ticket, he still have to wait to be renewed the following year for it wasn't guaranteed. But he's told me it's a sellout every week and has been for 3 years.
Seattle and San Francisco are both tech hubs. I don't know what that get. They're so the tech kind of money. A little bit of entrepreneurial. Yeah, the money. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. And basically, like the economy of both of those cities and the suburbs of both of those cities are doing really well. So people are able to afford things, and the way they tier it as far as owners boxes, and a lot of times, at least here in the States, I don't think this happens in England as much, but they do a lot of corporate, like a company will buy, or even a small company, like I don't know, like a company that's only doing, I don't know, 25 million or something in revenue each year, will buy their employees seats, season tickets to the game, and then it's like a rotation around who gets to go to those seats. So it's a lot of times that's who you're seeing in the regular season is the company's employees kind of going for free, but it's a benefit of working for that employer. So anything, and they have deals like that to corporations and stuff around them. I'm not saying that's going to happen at Leeds United. What I'm saying, basically, again, punchline is they will look to maximize every source of revenue, which you have to do. It can't just be ticket sales. It's got to be food. It's got to be beer. It's got to be the tent. It's got to be the merch. It's got to be everything. That's what they're gonna look like. And quite honestly, I just saw the kits. I'm kind of like, They used to be around $50. I'm kind of waiting for
90.
things to go down, but even like, well, at least maybe over here, maybe with shipping, it used to be around 50.
90 euro for this season's Leeds United home kit.
Oh,
And
90.
if I go back 4 years ago, that was 45 euro.
And
Yeah.
they're doing stuff, interesting stuff.
Inflation.
They're doing stuff with inflation as well, but they're doing interesting stuff with Adidas and other partners that are making more fashion type of, tracksuits and I don't know, baby kits.
That stuff is too much. They've released some. I buy a lot of the tops, the leisure wear. So I think Adidas make fantastic leisure wear stuff. So I'm a big fan of Adidas stuff off the field. And this is the first year I've really been blown away by having a relatively bespoke kit as well, which is great. But I've looked at some of the retro stuff they brought out that I would normally be like, absolutely, I'll buy that. I'm looking at a jacket for 120 euro. I'm like, I'm never buying, because by the time I add shipping costs onto that, and I'm in Ireland, so I'm in the EU, where Britain are no longer in the EU, so I have to pay import tax on anything I buy from the UK. Ireland and the UK are like that. They're attached. Our gross domestic products are linked incredibly tightly. Like most of Ireland's exports go to the UK, and a ton of exports from the UK come to Ireland. And I go, well, I'm gonna get caught for it. A postman's gonna knock at my door, hand me a parcel, and go, "There's a 20 euro charge on this. You got to pay now, or else I'm taking the parcel back." And that's on top of the 140 I've already paid for it, and now it's 160. Like, that's just not affordable anymore. And you're pricing average fans out of buying your stuff because it's too expensive. Fine, I can wait to go into the shop and buy things. That's okay, no problem. When I'm over games, I'll buy some stuff. But if you look at the kits this year as well, I like my kits and I like my merch to look the same as the club's merch, except I have a training top this year with no sponsorship on it because they didn't print them for outside of the UK. The home jersey I bought online doesn't have Flamingo Land sponsor on the shirt and doesn't have the anything, only available for if you buy it in store, not available online. So they're saving money. There's this current term being used called shrinkflation, where it's, instead of increasing the price of your product, you reduce the size of your product. You keep it at the same price. So it costs you less to make that, and you can make more of that product for the same amount of money because there's less of it. But you charge the same price, therefore you make more money versus what you spend on making it. Not printing that stuff on the shirts saves the club money. And how many of their shirt sales are done in the ground, and how many of the shirt sales are exported out of Yorkshire? And when you're doing that, that's costing you less to make. You're charging more for that shirt. And then it's costing people on imports as well. So all of a sudden it becomes, well, I'm not getting the same thing. My jersey doesn't look like the club's jersey because it doesn't have the same markings on it. But you're charging me more money for it.
Yeah.
That's the bit that I don't like. I have no problem paying more money for stuff if the quality is better or if it's worth the value of that product. But if you're gonna just remove things and then charge more money for it, that's shrinkflation, and it's a horrible trend that's going on. It's like everything's become smaller and they're charging you the same amount or slightly more for it and making more money as a result of it. And I'm not okay with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that it will. I think someone's looking at that more than they used to. I think, like as you said, you're like, I think people are like, you think a kit is pretty kind of cut and dry. But I think people are like, someone's looking at the printing, someone's looking at what it originally cost me to get from Adidas, and they're like maximizing every little thing, or, and that could be on the buying side, not just their cost. I'm saying they could be going to Adidas and saying, getting a better price on this. But all of that stuff, I think, is going to be maximized to its fullest extent in ways that haven't. But I think, as a fan, it stinks to be paying that price, number one, but number two is hopefully that money and that revenue is going to be reinvested in the club. That's the best thing I got. But yeah.
Well, all that to say too is the landscape in the Premier League with the top six opposed to the.
I would love to see.
It's huge.
I would love
to be able to compete.
Yeah,
you have to have.
To that point, somebody tweeted out the other day I think it's a Yorkshire Evening Post kit that you can now get on Fanatics, which is we can't get a UK Fanatics. Fanatics obviously ships here to the United States, but I couldn't get anything for Leeds United related in the world unless it was bootleg, unless it was, Chinese, which is fine too. I'm not going to hate on you if you do that. But basically, like anything LUFC official, I could not get unless it was from the website here in the States. Even when
Yeah.
they were in the Premier League, this is the first time, and they're doing a short run of kind of a retro kit on Fanatics that I can get, and I think the shipping's very cheap. But it's something that's more affordable to me as an option of the club that I can get. And there's maybe I think a scarf and maybe something else, but like stuff like that. I would love to log in as Arsenal, Tottenham, Liverpool, all those fans do, and they can go to Dick's Sporting Goods here, which is a sporting goods store, or Walmart, and get an Arsenal kit. And it's like, we can't do that here yet, but I would love to one day, in a way, get Leeds United.
I think if we get a sustained period of time in the Premier League, I think you'll start seeing that.
Yeah,
I did try and open a Leeds store in Ireland, but they opened it in Belfast and not Dublin, which I thought was bizarre. And it closed within a year, which I wasn't surprised at. There is a large Ulster Leeds United support, but there's a much bigger Republic of Ireland support for Leeds, and also 60% of the population of Ireland lives in Dublin. So, it's a pretty big catchment market for it as well. But it's, to your point, Alex, unless it's online or bootlegged, can't get it.
Yeah. And you said your Leeds United is what? Used to be, or maybe still is, one of Ireland's biggest clubs.
Yeah,
right?
it's one of the top 5 supporter clubs now. Man City are picking up pace with the younger generation now coming through. But if you go through it, it's Manchester United, Liverpool, Leeds, and the three big clubs. I mean, Arsenal will have a tiny support over here. Manchester United pretty big, Liverpool very big. There's a lot of similarities between Dublin and Liverpool. The two cities are very similar. Their histories are kind of intertwined with each other. They're very working class areas, and a lot
similar
of them
sizes.
A lot of similar growing as well. Like there would have been the shipping yards and there would have been the mines and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of similarities between the two cities as well. But so they have a huge support here. And then Leeds, just as a generational thing, because Leeds were massive in the 60s and 70s, and they're on the radio all the time. And then you had John Giles playing for them as well, and that helped as well because he was playing for Ireland. So that's where that comes from. Then I'm a second generation Leeds fan because my dad was a Leeds fan, so therefore I was a Leeds fan. And if you look at a lot of Leeds fans at my age, they'll tell you, "Oh, my dad was a Leeds fan." It's the same, it's passed down kind of thing. So the current Leeds block in Ireland is not because Leeds were successful. The previous one was. The current block of Leeds fans in Ireland, they're generational Leeds fans. So, that can change. But the Man City is growing. I have a nephew who is a Man City fan, which hurts. But one's Liverpool, one's Manchester City. They're my partner's nephews. But they're Man City are growing pretty rapidly. But our Leeds are still pretty big. If Leeds come over here, they'll still fill a stadium. They always have. They always will.
Yeah. Well, it is, and I noticed that it is very generational. Like when I look at other Leeds fans and like Twitter, and just it seems to, and I like that. The type of stuff is really cool to me. Chris and I chose this life. We brought this on ourselves as you said here, but we love it.
I did get my son though. I've got him. He's hooked. So I passed it down one generation.
It's so great to watch. Like, I don't know, the championship and the Premier League to me are just are light years ahead of where the MLS is. And so I'll just end that there. Real quick. So the last topic I just want to bring up was there was another channel I won't name. And, they brought up the Meslier debate. And it's a fair debate to have. But what are your thoughts? I'm interested in your thoughts because it is kind of intriguing on Meslier. I think he's a sweeper keeper. I think there's a reason why the managers continue to pick him. He has some ability that is very unique. And, there is something to say with the eye test. I think he is a confidence player. And I think he's been doing a job this year thus far. Whether he can do that in the Premier League again, the only year that he really did it was that COVID year, was that no fans year. So bags of talent. But what are your thoughts with Meslier? Do you think he's done enough? Would you look to bring in a goalkeeper? What are your thoughts there? We'll start with you.
I think the first thing and the most important thing to point out is he's a very young goalkeeper. He's 22, very, very early stages. Goalkeepers don't hit their peak till their late 20s, early 30s. I think it's slightly unfair to say it was just a COVID season. I think the year he came into that team was the first year of Bielsa's, and he was the first choice keeper that year, and he was excellent that year, absolutely excellent for us that year, and he was very good in the year we got promoted, and very good in the Premier League the first year. The difference for me is over the last 2 years, he was a goalkeeper that just had no protection at all from his defense. And I've had arguments with people around this saying that's not the defense's job. And I'm like, that's literally the defense's job. It's their job is to protect the goal and the keeper and to reduce the amount of opportunities the opposition get against that keeper and against that goal. If you look at the best goalkeepers in the world, they're usually playing for the best teams in the world who usually have the best defenses. You could argue that Ederson and Alisson in England as two of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League, but they face so few shots in matches. They barely ever have to. I mean, Manchester City could play 4 midfielders in defense because they just don't defend. They attack constantly. So the goalkeeper only has a couple of things to do in a game. Meslier last year faced more shots than any other goalkeeper in the division. Now, to a point, you can say, fine, but he still made mistakes. I think they're intertwined. I think he's made mistakes because he's conceded so many goals because of the amount of shots he's faced early in the season or the previous season. And he just hasn't had a let off. And then every single mistake he makes is under the microscope then because of that. I think there's a very good goalkeeper in there. I would hate for us to be the team that lets him go. And then in 4 or 5 years' time, we're talking about Illan Meslier being one of the best goalkeepers in the world at some other club. Because before his dodgy spell last season, and the year before last and last year, his 2 wobbly years, there was a lot of clubs around Europe who wanted him. Paris Saint-Germain were constantly banging on about bringing him in when Donnarumma moved on, or if Donnarumma moved on. So there's clearly something in the guy. Again, the other side as well, people will criticize his handling or not coming for crosses. And again, that comes down to, well, what did you buy? You know, modern goalkeepers, you're buying them for their footballing ability. Can you play out from the back with the ball? Can you be a sweeper? Can you pass? Exactly what you said, Alex, a sweeper keeper. So therefore, there's a trade-off. You're not going to get a goalkeeper who is brilliant handling, fantastic reactions and shot stopping, comes for crosses, and is pretty good dealing with the ball at his feet as well. Meslier has come out past our back too this year at times with the ball. He's been nearly on the halfway line, clipping balls at 2 matches. So you can't have a 22-year-old and expect him to be brilliant at everything. I think the game against Leicester showed that he is a good goalkeeper because he didn't have a lot to do in that game. But when the moment popped up where he did need to make a save, the concentration was there, the sharpness was there, and that was an outstanding save. Anyone who thinks that's not a world-class save doesn't know football. It's top-notch save. But when you're facing shot after shot, shot after shot after shot on a consistent basis, you're knackered when it comes to that moment where you have to make those big saves. And ultimately they go in because you're not sharp enough or you're too tired or you're being exposed too much. You know, you have to protect your goalkeeper. Any coach worth their salt will tell the defense, protect the keeper, limit the amount. That's not a negative comment against your goalkeeper. That's telling your back four to do their job. Don't let shots be taken. Because the problem is, if Glenn Kamara makes a mistake or Ethan Ampadu makes a mistake, there's 4 other players to step in there, 5 other players to step in there and fix his mistake. If Illan Meslier makes a mistake, it's a goal. That's it. He's the last line. If he makes a mistake, it's done. I think sometimes we can be very harsh. We have a fan base who talk an awful lot about loyalty and wanting loyalty, but the same people in the same breath will say, no, not him. He's crap, bin him off. So we don't show any loyalty to these younger players to grow. Most clubs won't have a 22-year-old goalkeeper. Most clubs will go with an experienced goalkeeper. We've got a goalkeeper who could be a very, very good goalkeeper in a couple of years' time. I think he's a good goalkeeper now. I think there's better goalkeepers than him, but I think he's fine for what we need to do. But if we go up, we've got to put a better defense in front of him. We have to as a team because we can't keep conceding the amount of chances that we conceded last time we were in the Premier League because we will lose games. It's that simple. Quality will step up and we'll lose games. So I think he gets a harsher rap at times. I think it was the right decision last year to take him out of the team. I think he could have taken him out earlier, but that's just from taking a kid out of the firing line. You look at Bamford as well. If you're getting that level of abuse, I'm not saying it's unwarranted. I'm just saying if you're getting that level of abuse, that grinds you down. That does take its toll on you. You're constantly thinking about, I have to be great at this. I have to do this right. I have to do this right. If I do it wrong, they're going to be on my back. You know, and he's standing in front of the cop. And then he's standing in front of the south stand. Like he's not getting a break from either end. So I think he has the potential to be a very, very good goalkeeper. I still don't think we're good enough defensively because, we said it earlier on, we're conceding sloppy goals to poor sides and we shouldn't be, and we should have more clean sheets than we have. We haven't been great clean sheets. So that's what has to be done. There has to be better defense in front of him. He has to be protected. And then you rely on him in those big moments like Leicester to dig you out. And he did it. So more of those kind of performances. What I really liked recently was when he had his good game, that the players pushed him towards the fans to do the whole, 3 fist bumps to the fans. They pushed him out to let him have that moment. And as he turned around, he just went, and there's this big sigh that he let out. And you just think how much pressure came off his shoulders there, seeing the fans engage with him in a positive way to go, maybe last year's gone now. Maybe that's behind me now and I can focus and move forward. And I think he's looked more confident as a result. He's doing more media stuff now as well. Again, he's talking again. He's coming out of a shell again. I just don't want to see us be the team that let a really good potentially keeper go and then watch him in a couple of years' time be a great goalkeeper for somebody else.
Yeah, I agree. He's got the promotion underneath his belt, so he's done it at this level. We paid nothing, almost nothing for him, $5 million or something like that, and I just think he's got freakish ability. I mean, he's huge, a huge man. He's got the leg. I think he can get rattled. I think if you put pressure on him in certain games, I think he's made mistakes, but there is something to be said, and goalkeepers have a long life. In all likelihood, he will move on at some point. But at this season, at this point, the clean sheets and how we're operating and how he distributes the ball, how he plays out from the back, I don't make a move. I don't know. I could maybe have more of a debate next season. I could have more of a debate, but this season I'm solid with Meslier. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say the age thing is huge for me. He's so early in his lifespan as a goalkeeper. The other thing, he got a new coach this season, right? Let's not forget they brought in a new keeper coach. So, let's give that time. One of the things I've noticed is he's doing really well with he's leading out of the back. I like when he's baiting some of the defenders to come press him. He's doing well, putting his foot on top of the ball, waiting for that press to come and then playing it out. So there's little things. Another great thing I've noticed this year is I think his leadership has improved. I don't know if you guys noticed, but he's a lot more vocal, just way more vocal than he has been in the past, which is to me a reflection of confidence. Yes, some of the technical stuff, as everyone's pointed out, the statistics, yes, you can look at that, but I think value-wise, like, he's so young, keep a hold of him. I think Darlow was brought in thinking he was going to be the first choice. Why didn't that happen? Well, Farke got to look at both of them, and he's made the choice, and I trust that, Melly is in better form and the one he trusts the most to do the work. So, yeah, I don't see anything, if you look at last season, I think all the players on the team regressed, right? Statistically, just form. There's some of the players that aren't with the club anymore that are doing just fine now that they've left the club. So I think there was obviously a lot of issues just in morale and, what happened last season. So I don't know if you can just base the last season on he's just not good enough. I think it was a tough year for all the players. And I think you have to take that into account. And, he's gotten a fresh start. Is he perfect? No. Is he really young? Yes. And I'm okay with him. And, maybe the question arises again, if we do get promoted, is he Premier League level? Bring in some competition, let him sort that out, and we go from there.
Yeah, morale was on the floor last year. It was terrible too.
He wasn't the only player that's form just dropped out of the bottom, right?
It's hard to be a keeper in that situation.
Yeah. So
look at Stroke last year.
Yeah, exactly. He's
a couple of weeks ago. If you would have heard last season at any point last year that Pascal Stroke had an injury and would miss a game, you'd have gone, nah, not a big deal. This year, Pascal Stroke's going to miss the game. You're like, oh.
We were talking about loaning him out at the beginning of this season. After the first preseason game, I was one of them. I'm like, does he need to go on loan? He does not look confident. But
people want redemption acts for some players, but not
just never know. He's got a new coach. He's got a new system. Like, let it marinate a little bit.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic point. I just want to go over the top 4 games this week. Obviously, we have Rotherham Friday. at their field, at their ground, Friday, and that's 3:00 American.
Watford at home.
And that's 8:00 on the UK and Ireland. Leicester have Watford
A
on
decent bit of
following.
form, Watford. They've 3 wins and 2 draws in the last 5 matches. They're unbeaten in the last 5 games. They're getting a little bit of momentum together. Maybe the right time, and Leicester on the back of 2 defeats.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Leicester comes out. When I look at Leicester, I always quote Ujier. It says it's possession with purpose. Like sometimes it feels like Leicester's possessing the ball, but there's not a lot of purpose behind it.
Yeah.
Felt around like our game, it was like they were passing the ball back around their back line into the midfield back, and they were keeping the ball well, but it just didn't seem like there was purpose behind it, where you feel like City always has purpose, even though they're playing this keep away game. City always feels like, so I obviously know that Enzo is a Pep disciple, but yeah, there's something about where it just feels that Leicester, it's a little bit stagnant, can get stale, their possession.
You can hide a lot, Alex. You can hide an awful lot with that kind of football. And if you look at Harry Winks' comments about things that were said about Harry Winks when he was at Tottenham, where he's not an effective player. He passes sideways and backwards. He takes the easy option. That his stats always look great because he goes a yard left, a yard right, or 2 yards. And that's okay in certain systems. If you're a 6 and your job is to link the play, that's fine. But Dewsbury Hall's kind of the same as well, but he's a more advanced version of it. And when they've come up against teams this year, Middlesbrough, Leeds, for example, the last 2, who've tried to dominate possession of the ball, they just haven't looked as effective, the 2 of them, because now all of a sudden they need to start doing progressive passing, and they're not capable of that. Leicester can wax lyrical about Harry Winks this season, but Harry Winks has been an average player in the Premier League. And if they go up and they think he's going to be the top player that they think he already is, they're in for a rude awakening next season when he goes back to being 6 out of 10 Harry Winks. That's going to happen. And the fact that Ethan Ampadu and Glenn Kamara just bossed that midfield in that game I'd be worried if I was Leicester. And I don't think he's as much of a Guardiola disciple as he is a wish version of Guardiola. I think he does an awful lot of the same things as Guardiola without the effect that Guardiola has necessarily. And if you look at his press conferences over the last 2 games, he's been incredibly defensive about the defeats, to the point where he, instead of talking about Leeds winning the game, he wanted to tell everyone that Sunderland were a better side than Leeds. Like, but Leeds haven't played Sunderland, and Sunderland weren't playing in this game. Why are we talking about? It's deflecting the attention away. It's like, oh, it's nothing to do with Leeds. It's nothing to do with Leeds. Well, played Sunderland. They're a much better side than Leeds. You're being a bit defensive here. Maybe we've rattled you a little bit or touched a nerve. And then Burr do it again, and he's out saying, we didn't deserve to lose. We were the better team. And go, but you did lose, and you didn't score. And you lost against Leeds, and you didn't score. So at some point, your system's got to be questioned. If you're not creating chances to score goals, you can dominate possession all you want, but one shot on target against Leeds, it's not effective.
I think, too, we've gone through our adversity period at the very beginning of the season, right? So that builds character. It demonstrates you're able to get through diversity and come out on the other side of it. I think Leicester might be going through a little bit. I think playing Bro, like, they're starting to see some cracks, and I don't know if, can you handle that adversity? Can you get through that? Will that make you a better team or a worse team? And if the manager doesn't have the right attitude, he sets the tone. So it'll be interesting.
There's blood in the water, Chris.
There is. I can smell it. Yeah.
I've seen it. I'm interested in what Watford do. We've shown teams how to beat them, and then Middlesbrough have gone and beaten them, and Watford are on a good run of form.
But even in the game, you could see when their plan A was not working, they did not seem like they could cope with it, right?
Their fan channels said too, like, that's the way to beat us. When Liverpool when you press their back line, their goalkeeper, they struggle. But if you give them the ball, they'll pass all day. Yeah. So Huddersfield play Southampton, and Southampton is away. Ipswich play West Brom, and Ipswich is away. The thing about Ipswich, when I look at Ipswich, they are scoring goals. They have beautiful patterns of play. I'm very impressed by them. Obviously, a very tight team. But West Brom, the shipping goals. They're shipping goals. Ipswich is shipping goals.
It's a weekend to win, Alex. I think everyone else picks up results this weekend. I think The only one for me is the Watford Leicester one. I just want to see how Leicester react to the defeats and the break. But the rest of them, I think they're playing against teams they should be beaten and probably should be putting a couple of goals past. So it's a weekend to win, and win early on Friday, and then put the pressure on them, because if we win Friday night, it's 5 points.
I think we need to win the next two, because December looks really, really tough.
I think December, January, I think you're going to see the season line out as how it's going to finish. And we said this at the start of the season. We looked at the fixtures, Alex. We talked about December, and we talked about the last month of the season.
Yeah.
We said there's 2 months that could be very tricky and could decide. There's a lot of good teams, and we've got Middlesbrough in that patch as well, and they've found their form again. Carrick is doing the same thing he did last year with them. They're coming on a run as well. So it's that December, January block is going to be really important. But also take into consideration, Ipswich and Leicester will both lose players for the African Cup of Nations for 10 league matches they'll be gone for. Leeds have no players going to the AFCON. So Leicester's 4 players are gone, 3 of them are on the bench, but there's no that weakens your squad. Back to the conversation we were saying about depth in your squad. Now they have to look to options on the bench they maybe wouldn't be normally bringing on the pitch and wouldn't normally playing, and that can weaken the team. Ipswich is the same. So it might be a little bit of a wobble. Ipswich is the pressure. We'll see if Ipswich can handle the pressure of 2 back-to-back promotions, if they can deal with that and they can stick with it. We've been in this situation as well, and come Christmas we dropped off. It can happen pretty quickly. Christmas is a deciding month for me, and I think you'll see once we come out of January. I think whatever way the league table looks, I think it'll be much tighter than it is now. And I think they'll be the run of teams you'll see make a run for the end. And I wouldn't be surprised if Middlesbrough in the hunt when it comes to the end of January either.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got they had a nice run last year. It's gonna be fascinating. And I think December will be a big factor. And I've always circled the 23rd. We've got a lot of work to do till the 23rd, but if the 23rd I've said as a relegation, or if there's relegation 6-pointers, and this feels like a promotion 6-pointer early in the season, if we can and conservatively be within 6 points of Ipswich, then and we beat them and we get it to 3, or if we're within 3 or 4 and we get it to 1 or 0, I just think, wow, that would be incredible. Now, a lot of things can happen. We can drop points. Southampton can get in the game, can get in the top 2. A ton of things can happen, but Farke knows what he's doing, and he really talked about how it's pretty much holding serve and continuing to win, but it gets more nerve-wracking really in that springtime he talked about today, is where it really can your nerves kind of get a hold of you. His name is Gier Lynch. You can find him at iGier Lynch on Twitter. He is iGier Lynch on Twitter and Leeds United The View. And Gier is growing the beard out. As a beard. And I know Chris. Oops, this way. Chris is a
all
beard.
Beards, aren't we?
Keep it.
All beards.
All beards, aren't we? Keep it going. It's been great to see it. I know you're doing it for Movember, so go over. I know. Is there a link on your Twitter or your YouTube?
There's not. There should be, but there's not. But there's it's in one of my videos. I'll put it on my bio. I'll stick it on my bio today.
There will, if you can find it, you check out Gier's channel. You can probably find out and donate to his Movember, which obviously I believe supports prostate cancer. I had a grandfather that was affected by prostate cancer, actually father as well. Yeah. So good, an important cause. And then Chris, he is at Chris Fox 75 on Twitter. And obviously, if you don't know Gier United The View, subscribe to his channel if you're not subscribed. Many of you might be here because you love Gier so much, getting his opinion. Subscribe to me. Give me a subscribe.
Definitely do.
And I will try to download this and put this out on Spotify as well. Gier, such good conversation. Chris, good conversation as well.
Thank you.
Notes for the channel. I hope to continue to do this stuff. I want to dig into and find out more. I was doing in the spring, Chris, you were doing this too, finding out people's kind of origin stories. I like to do that. I'd love to do more of that and do that at scale and find some of these content creators' origin stories. But mini
Life.
obligation, life calls. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving, everybody. And dear Michael, Chris, thank you so much for